Hello again, I'm Stephen Wells, the host of the Motoring Weekly podcast for the Australian historic road and racing community. This is episode 191 with 4 more interviews from day 2 of the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance. Day 2 was a better day for the weather, with constant rain and drizzle on day 1, forcing the event to be fully inside. The organisers weren't able to showcase the cars in a moving display. Whilst it's nice to see a static exhibition, enthusiasts want to see the cars moving, smell them, and hear them run, especially the 1971 Ford XY Falcon GTHO. So with the weather improving, the day opened up with both indoor and outdoor events. Now, I took some time to meet with 2 owners of notable British cars, a Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn and a Reliant Scimitar GTE. I also spoke with the importer of a continuation of a great British motorcycle, the Brough Superior, although as you'll hear, they are no longer built in Britain, just as Royal Enfields are now built in India through a historical agreement. I also spoke with Simon Cavelle, the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance first artist-in-residence, who spoke about his work, background, and that the overall winner would have a commission for Simon to produce an artwork of the winning car. So let's start with Fred Drake, the importer of the Brough Superior motorcycles. So on day 2 of the Sydney Harbour Concours, and I'm with Fred Drake, the managing director of Brough Superior motorcycles in Australia. And I wanted to catch up because there are a number of bikes on show here at the concourse. But Brough Superior is a very old name that has come back. So Fred, first of all, thank you for your time and showing me these bikes. What was the intent of bringing the brand back?
Stephen, we'll come and look at this one. I know people can't see it, but we'll look from this side. My goal was I'm a motorcyclist since I was 15 and still a passionate motorcyclist, and I wanted something that was mechanical and new and modern, and then I came across the recreation of the Brough Superior, the SS100.
Yeah.
And what appealed to me was the naked bike and seeing them. To me, it's about the mechanical. The motorcycle's about seeing how it works. Yeah. I know there's some nice bikes with flare fairings, but I really like to see how things work.
Yeah.
So what attracted me to Brough was an famous old name, famous history, and this is a recreation. It's not a copy. It's just what they do is they use the styling cues from the original Broughs that were built from 1919 to 1939.
Yeah.
Because Brough ceased production to produce engine parts, Merlin engines in England, and they really didn't start after the war again. But anyway, the French guys bought them. They're now made in Toulouse, France.
Okay.
And what I loved about them was the mechanics of them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and they appeal, and I call them men's artwork.
Yeah.
Because the more you know about things, mechanical things and machining and processes, the more you'll see into it.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a chance to get close to a Brough, you know, like the SS100 has a titanium frame. It has the current models. The whole engine is and crankcases, the barrels and the heads are all machined out of solid aluminium.
Yeah.
There's a lot of CNC machine. All the side covers, all machined, CNC machining. And I've had guys who operate CNC machines, and they just stand there. You can see them, just the mind ticking over.
Yeah.
So wow, because there's multiple programming to be able to do that. Complex shapes like a side cover. So that's the attraction for me. And the Brough said, "Oh well, would you like to bring them into Australia?" I said, "Yes." So our basic objective is to bring them in and have them be their importer and distributor for Australia and New Zealand.
And they do have a history. You've got some signs up here to remind people about probably the most famous guy who ran them was Lawrence of Arabia. And I've been joking earlier because he apparently had 7 of them.
I think, yes, he did. I think it's either 5 or 7. I've read a bit up about George, Lawrence.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he died after an accident on his 5th or 7th, swerving. The story goes swerving to meet dodge a couple of boys on a push bike.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was riding an SS100.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I was joking because there's a Reliant Scimitar here today, and Princess Anne had 7 of those, and I've been joking that Ginger Baker also had 7 Jensen FFs. So 7 is a number that clearly, if you really get into a particular mark, you're going to have a lot of them.
Stephen, that's a good tip because I've only got 5 here today, and our trailer will take 6. We put 1 across the back.
Yeah. And one of the things about talking about Lawrence of Arabia is that 2 of the bikes are very much homage to him.
Yes, I didn't quite get that last point. Sorry.
So the homage to Lawrence of Arabia being the Dagger and the Lawrence motorcycle.
This is the current models. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, the Brough are now made in Toulouse, France, and they really, as you say, pay respect and homage to Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're right about the 2. Yeah. The Lawrence, this modern version, is named after him, and then there's the Dagger, which is named after the Bedouin sword.
Yeah.
Dagger.
And they are absolutely stunning. As you say, naked bikes, you can see what's going on them. I ran Ducatis for many years, naked Ducatis, and people would say to me, what's that noise? And I'd say, well, that's the valves on them. Because you can see as you said, you can see what's going on around, when you're actually looking at it. But also, it's the whole design concept of how it's packaged together is just so beautiful. But when I look at these bikes, one of the first things I noticed were just sort of the machining on some of the items on the handlebars and things. So clearly, somebody has done a work of art on that when they probably didn't need to, but it's part of the style and the reason for the bike.
I agree because, as I said, the more you know about processing and things, the more you'll see into it. Well, if you take the AMB 001, which is a collaboration with Aston Martin, they come up with the design work of the aero, and by the way, they're bringing out a street version. The street version is being released at a Goodwood Festival Speed in July this year, so we're looking forward to that. I've seen the basic photographs, but what I want to point out on that, and I'll just show you, but you'll be able to describe it, is that because the input from Aston Martin, the sleek styling, but also there's a concealed master cylinder for the clutch and the brake. Yeah. Now, if you didn't know much about motorcycles, you would not know it was there. Yeah. So also they've got AP slipper clutches. So they're actually. I know everybody can't see it, but we have to increase our powers. So the whole bike from beginning to end is custom made. The great thing about a Brough is that basically there'll be no 2 Broughs in Australia of the same model the same. Yeah. Because they're totally bespoke. Yeah. They have stock models, but we've never sold. Mostly we've had customers who say, look, this is what I want, and we can do that. And also I've spec'd up bikes, what I call it for Australia, our colour combinations. Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
And every rider is different as well, and that's the one thing. If I look at me, I'm 6'5", and then the others are much smaller. So it's sometimes difficult to find a bike that suits you. So to be able to go and sit down with someone like yourselves and saying, well, look at my body, look at the style of my riding, and this is what I want to do with the bike. You can now advise them on the right specification for the bike that would suit them.
Yes, but we're also more into the presentation, the finishes. We've got carbon fibre, hidden carbon fibre, carbon fibre showing through. The toning, like we can do engines in all plain black, two-tone black. The wheels, actually, I look around. That's it. I don't know what you call that colour. But, that's a hard colour to describe on the Dagger. Yeah. It's a very. dark beige. No,
Yes.
no. It's a
Well, that goes with the sand and the
sand,
desert.
Yes, so that's all carbon fibre. So if you're over here, we've got carbon fibre. The weave showing through. My personal opinion on carbon fibre, there's not much point having it unless you can actually see the weave. So I always like the weave showing through. This lovely carbon fibre tank, ducktail, mudguards front and rear.
Yeah. And you've also got a Richard Mille edition as well here. So you've got the Aston one and then the Richard Mille alongside it.
Yes, this is another collaboration with Richard Mille, the famous watchmaker. And we'll just stand in front of it so that...
It is quite a stunner, isn't it?
So what I'll do, I'll take you to the other side because you'll see. It's like having a guide. Something explains things to you. The Richard Mille is inspired by the board track races of the 20s.
Okay.
And you'll see the sweep cut-off pipes. So it's a very minimalist bike. It's a track. They're both track bikes. The Richard Mille and the AMB. But really, we don't expect that many people to be. We do have a customer who rides his AMB around Phillip Island. Yeah. But we don't expect many customers to do that. They're more for people who really appreciate mechanical, love motorcycles and appreciate mechanics.
And also, when it's on show like this, you get to see a lot of the detail up close. I had a manager in Singapore many years ago who had a Mike Halewood replica in his front room on display because it was, it wasn't to be ridden. It was to basically show the bike.
Yes, well, we've delivered these bikes to units overlooking Coolum Beach. Yeah. Houses tucked up in Noosa and hard to get to driveways. Yeah. Offices. In fact, our showroom in Brisbane's actually in our office. I just love the thrill of walking through the lobby, having the bikes on display.
Yes, yeah. And then obviously, you've got the 4 of them here that you can use on the road and 2 which are ready for play use on track.
Yes. So of the Brough, some are single seaters, and the Lawrence and the Dagger are two seat. Yeah. The Dagger has a removable ducktail, but they come equipped with the foot pegs.
Yeah. So you can get the recreation of one of the earlier bikes that is at the front, absolutely stunning, or that you can get something a bit more modern but with a nod back to early times.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah. So, and also, this Dagger has actually got a shorter wheelbase, so it's more of a... It's hard. So these are new categories. Like it's not a sports bike; it's more of a GT.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this weekend will give you a lot of people looking at them and getting in touch. I'll put some of the links up to you up on the podcast detail, so people can go and actually have a look at them as well as listening to us talk about them, because you have to see them rather than just audio. So maybe not the right media to use for a motorcycle, but at least I hope the listeners can get a feel of what you've brought in the country, and they can then explore further.
Yes, so basically the information is available on our Australian website, Brough Superior Australia. Also, we have a limited social media presence, but also the factory has a very good Instagram. Yeah. And there's a lot of modern material, and we're going to work on upgrading. Yeah. So we've discovered social media.
Good. Well, I'll help out by getting this up, and people can learn a bit more about the new Broughs, and then I hope that they go and check you out. Thank you, Fred. It's great to catch up today.
Well, Stephen, I want to thank you for being part of your program. And I think that to me, it's all to me, I have a very simple view that all motorcycles are great, and all contact and advertising and discussion about motorcycles is great.
It is.
So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Fred. Next, I spoke with Sir Victor Nash about his Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn. I'm with Victor Nash, who has brought another beautiful car. I've just asked him how many cars he's brought over the years, and it's 3. Victor, what is this one that you've got here today?
This one's a 1950 Silver Dawn Rolls-Royce. It was delivered new to Hartwood Station near Camargo and to the Patterson, John Hunter Patterson, and it was on his property for a while. The Patterson property was quite famous because it was a favourite place of Prince Philip's. He stayed there a few times, and so that's where the car came from. A lot of these cars did go to the squattocracy, so there's quite a few of them around. They built about 700 Silver Dawns. Originally, this was the first model that was built with an in-house coachwork. Prior to this model, all the Rolls-Royces and Bentleys were delivered in chassis form and went to coach builders to have bespoke bodies on them. Rolls-Royce initially started off with the Bentley Mark VI, which is the first of their in-house bodies, which is very similar to this. And England after the war was in a rather bad state financially, so they built it for export and largely tried to send them to the United States. Well, it failed because the Americans didn't understand what a Bentley was. So then what they decided to do was to detune it and put a Rolls-Royce grille on it and redesign the bonnet a bit and sold it as a Rolls-Royce because the Americans knew what a Rolls-Royce was. So it sold quite well. The gear shift in these is on the right-hand side on the floor, but for the left-hand drive ones, they put a column shift on it. And so they sold quite well in the States as the Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn. A few were built for export that came to Australia, and so that's the story of this particular car.
So it's interesting that they moved in-house from the coach building. Was that to, was that a problem with some of the post-war getting access to metals and other bits and pieces and people?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. So by going for the in-house bodywork, it did speed up their production. So that was one of the main reasons. People didn't have to wait around. And also, with the coach builders, some of them were very, very smart coach work where they put on, but some of them had rather unfortunate styles because that's what the owner wanted. Yeah. So this allowed the company to control their product. And the same thing with the Spirit of Ecstasy mascots on them. Many years ago, people had their own mascots and they moved them from one car to another. And some were really quite nice, but others were like a naked lady doing something extraordinary, or a Mickey Mouse or something like that they felt was unbecoming of the brand. Yeah. So they got the Sykes Spirit of Ecstasy, and it comes in two forms. It comes in the kneeling form, which is on the Silver Dawns and the Phantom 3s, and also on the Silver Wraith. And all the others have the standing mascots. So that was a little bit different.
And it's interesting that they, Rolls-Royce certainly kept that theme of the names for many years, didn't they?
Yeah.
About quietness and being, ultra reliable.
Well, that's right. I mean, the engine is a wonderful six-cylinder and pretty well an industrial engine in many ways. And I mean, they delivered all over the world, so they weren't necessarily Rolls-Royce dealers everywhere, and a lot of them had to be maintained by their chauffeurs or the mechanics. So they had fairly good training for chauffeurs at that time, and also people had to be able to work on them. There are certain differences for export markets. Like with Australia, we have a lot of dust, so they have an oil bath air cleaner on them because of the dust problems, and also like things like with the height of the car, just made for the Australian conditions. But it's a very robust car, and I tour around all over the place in this, and I've had it for about 20 years now, and I really enjoy it.
Well, it sounds like it, and it's in beautiful condition. I was just looking at the interior. It's really does suit the whole car very well. The two-tone bodywork, grey, and a sort of a stone grey. What would you call a darker grey?
It's Tudor grey over shell.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay. And then the interior is the same. But one of the comments you said that a lot of these cars went up to stations
Yes.
up country, and I can always imagine somebody on that station driving this through, which would be so incongruous to its surroundings.
Not particularly. I mean, we have to remember that the 50s was a time of the wool boom, and all the squatters had heaps of money, and naturally they enjoyed these cars, and the cars are very robust. And I was fortunate enough to take this car to Hartwood Station, which is where the John Hunter Patterson lived, and been shown around the station and driven around on the station in the car. So it went back to its original home a couple of years ago after a rally that I took the car down there. So it was lovely to see. But no, it's a good, robust car.
Yeah, and I think we probably do forget that the 50s in Australia was very much dominated by one or two product, wasn't it? So you had very wealthy pastoralists and others, and then the cities might be a slightly different style.
Huge difference. Yeah. So there was people had lots of money were the pastoralists, and also the bookmakers in the city, and also gamblers as well, colourful racing identities.
Right.
So they had lots of money.
Yeah.
So not too many people had the kind of money for these sort of cars, because they were 3 or 4 times the price of a Holden, or 10 times the price of a Holden at the time. So you had to have the shillings to pay for them. But as far as they say, the quality remains long after the price is forgotten. And would be quite happy to get in this car and drive it to Perth.
Yeah.
I mean, the engine's totally original, runs perfectly, and I'm absolutely delighted with it.
Yeah. And I have seen pictures of some of your cars in very far off places, so you do live up to that by driving them in places that a lot of others wouldn't take their cars.
Well, I believe you only live once. And if you've got beautiful cars, you don't want to stick them in a museum and then be dead.
Yeah.
So you get out there and enjoy them and look after them, of course. And then we're only custodians anyway, and then you just pass them on to somebody else, and hopefully they'll enjoy them as well. So I'm the 4th owner of this car, and which is pretty rare when you think it's a 70-year-old car. So they're tightly held.
Yeah. So I think that must be the message of the podcast is, if you've got a beautiful car, get out and use it, because you only live once.
Exactly, you only live once, and you're dead a long time.
Thank you, Victor. It's lovely to catch up with you again and to see another beautiful Rolls-Royce.
All the best.
Thank you. Just before lunch, I spoke with Jeremy Best about his Reliant Scimitar, although we also covered a few more topics about marque clubs in Sydney. I'm now with Jeremy Best, who's got a rather gorgeous Reliant Scimitar at the Concours d'Elegance, something that I've always lusted after from a young child in the UK, because they're such a great concept of a car. So Jeremy, can you describe your beautiful car?
Yes, I equally have been enamoured with the Reliant Scimitar and always thought it was a very clever design. Back in the 1980s, when I was 20-something years old and I didn't have the funds to buy an E-Type, I was thinking of what's the next best thing I can buy. And for a few £100, I realised you could buy a Reliant Scimitar. And I probably have had 8 of them, I think, over the years. I've got 2 at the moment, but the car I'm displaying here today is, interestingly, it's a 1969, so first of the GTEs, what's known as an SE5, and probably the GTE in its purest form.
And Reliant's an interesting manufacturer, because they had quite a history of producing fiberglass cars. including one which I believe is called the Sabre that ended up in Israel.
That's right. You're right. They were one time. They were the largest manufacturer of fiberglass cars in the world. Obviously, well remembered through things like Only Fools and Horses with the Reliant Robin and amusing cars like that. But they did some serious work. They also, for Ford, made all of the body panels and assembled all the Group B RS200 rally cars.
Which is a bit of a difference from a three-wheeler Reliant Robin. So they've gone from extreme to extreme.
Well, they were, a serious industrial company. They weren't just mucking around.
Yeah.
They also made parts for trains and things like that. So they were the go-to people for fiberglass.
And did they do, you mentioned Ford, were they also contracted to other manufacturers to do one-offs or specific vehicles?
They certainly would have been. They did a lot of outside contract work, yeah.
Because I know that, people like, was it Jensen built the Volvo 1800 along the way. And you do think about Reliant as being, that mix of sports estate car like the Scimitar, and then other sports cars, and then as you said, the Reliant Robin and the Kitten, which was the four-wheeled version of it, so poles apart. So with the Scimitar, they came with a V6 Ford motor?
Well, originally the concept was for a cosmetics baron, I suppose you would call him, and he wanted a one-off car. And they approached Reliant and they built a car with a Daimler V8 engine, and that was eventually became the Scimitar, but not the GTE. The GTE, of course, is the Grand Touring estate car, which was developed by Ogle. And it really was a groundbreaking car in its day. It was much copied by people like Volvo with the P1800 ES, even by Lynx with the Jaguar XJS Eventer. But it was the GTE Scimitar that was the first of its type. But Ogle were an industrial design company. They made the Bush radio. They made the Riley Chopper, which was every schoolboy's dream bicycle, amongst other things, and the Bond Bug, which was also an unusual three-wheeler car that was made by Reliant but branded as Bond. They had some clever tech in the car that really wasn't seen on other cars, like split-folding rear seats. The chassis was made by John Crosswaite, or designed by John Crosswaite, who was the chassis designer at Lotus and previously at BRM. The engine is really front mid-engine. It's well behind the front axle line. The proprietary parts bin things in the car are obviously Triumph front suspension, brakes and steering, nice rack and pinion steering. The rear axle assembly is a Salisbury axle shared with most Jaguars and Aston Martins of the period, and has a location system identical to an Aston Martin DB4, 5 and 6, with 4-link trailing arms, a Watts linkage and coil-over shock absorbers. So in a way, it was a really groundbreaking car.
Yeah, and for a better price than all the ones that you've mentioned.
Indeed, yeah. And of course, you can't mention this particular car without mentioning the Princess Royal. And I have a letter in the history of the car from her press office, and she had 8 of them in total.
Which is a good example of somebody having that, mark, I don't even know how you describe it, sort of a loyalty, I guess.
Well, let's face it, she could have had any car she wanted.
Yeah. But she chose the Reliant Scimitar.
Yeah, 8 of them.
Yeah. Not that she's greedy, but she saw the value in each one of them.
Yes, you can get your equestrian gear in the back, and there's many a story of her being stopped for speeding in them, because of course they were 120 mile an hour car. The very first one I had, I went to a classic car show in Brighton, and on the Lewis bypass, when I must preface this with saying, when I got the car, there was a handwritten logbook, and the first owner had tested the maximum speed and got 122 out of it. So I thought, I'm going to have a go at this and see if I can do it. So I was going along the Lewis bypass, and I got it up to 120 miles an hour. But I noticed that the ventilation system in the cabin was pressurising the inside, and the door frames were inching their way away from the window, from the seals. Yeah.
But you proved it. You proved that you could do it.
It does it. I can tell you it does it.
So you've had a number of them. Ultimately, what was it that she said, it's a cheaper version of some of the other cars, but styling-wise and the package, were you attracted to them simply because of the way that it was manufactured, or it was a lower volume run vehicle?
I think all of those things. I do think it's a visually attractive vehicle. It's better from some angles than others, and colour dependent as well. My car being a silver car, sort of pseudo metallic finish really for a plastic car. But it's got some really interesting lines that you see in the body design that you don't see in a flat coloured car.
Yeah. And also, they started out with those V6s. Were they a 3.5 litre or 3 litre when they started?
Well, the original Scimitar prior to the GTE had the straight six Zephyr engine in it, which was a 2.5 litre straight six, but they did fit triple SU carburetors to it to give it some extra performance. Then the very last of that series, prior to the GTE, they started fitting the 2.5 litre and the 3 litre V6. But to my knowledge, in the GTE, it was only the 3 litre shared with the Capri and the Ford Zephyr and Zodiac of the period that was available.
So what you're actually describing is a car that you could still get parts for quite efficiently because they are well used in other manufacturers. So to maintain it must be relatively straightforward compared to some of the other hand-built cars that you've got to go back and remanufacture.
Well, if I told you this, it would sound like I was an uncaring owner, but I'm not. I do this as a profession. I look after classic cars, and I've been a classic car mechanic all my life. I grew up working in my father's garage on Jaguars and Aston Martins and things like that, which I still look after today. But since I bought this car, I've put a battery on it, a radiator cap, and I've washed it twice. I've done nothing else to it.
Well, and you've enjoyed it every day, hopefully.
Well, I don't drive it every day. I enjoy it for what it is, the joy of ownership.
So what happened to Reliant?
Reliant eventually went bust. I'm not sure why, but in the Tamworth area they were a huge employer. They had 2 factories, and I'm sure it would have been pretty devastating. But certainly by the late 1980s, maybe the early 90s, they had gone. The Scimitar brand lived on. It was taken up by a company called Middlebridge, who carried on with the SE6 series of cars, SE6B I think it was, with the 2.8 Cologne engine in it, out of the then current Capri. And the very last one of the Scimitars that the Princess Royal had was a Middlebridge, which she donated not very long ago to one of the UK car museums.
Right. So are Middlebridge still going today? No. So they have also folded, and presumably what would have happened to all the moulds and those tooling?
Well, they're a specialist for parts suppliers. There are certainly 2 in the UK who all they do, which is quite amazing, that you can make a business out of just supplying parts for Reliant Scimitars. But in a way, there's been a following for them ever since they were new cars, a bit like the Triumph Stag. People recognised their qualities when they were new or near new cars. The clubs have been very, very active in keeping the interest alive in them.
So you've got organisations a bit like Property Bridge who do it for Jensen. They've realised that there's a market, there's an enthusiast group out there who want to keep them running.
Well, I would compare it more to like Martin Roby. Martin Roby, of course, bought all the Jensen pressings and tools and stuff like that, so they could continue to remanufacture the parts. Whereas Cropredy Bridge, of course, are a dealer, repairer, restorer. They're not a specialist parts manufacturer.
Okay, all right. And so you've got 2 of these, did you say?
Yes, sadly I have 2, yes.
Right. So are you planning on any more? Because I think when I met you yesterday, you said there were only about 20 odd that were imported into Australia.
Yeah, 22 I believe. The car I'm displaying today was sold into New Zealand, very unusually, and had an owner who had the car for 35 years prior to myself. But the other car I've got is one of the 22 Australian delivered cars.
Okay. And is there a club of owners down here?
No, there used to be, if you do some internet searching, but that's waned and disappeared. The interest, if you were going to look at Australia as a whole, you would say Perth is probably Scimitar Central.
Right, okay. And it's interesting because one of my worries has been a lot of certainly the British marque car clubs are waning because the owners are getting older. Other people don't really understand the value of the vehicles that they've got. So you see clubs combining. So it's a pity that there isn't a Scimitar or a Reliant organisation down here.
I think one of the problems with car clubs, and I often speak to people from the Jaguar Club, Jaguar is very close to my heart. In fact, I often say I've got Jaguar in my DNA, is that and I'm not being rude, but the club members are getting elderly and they're not moving with the times. They need to have a better online presence and something more active where people can log on in their tea breaks and their lunch times and in the evening and feel connected to the club, and they don't have that. And I think unless they do start going down that route, these clubs will die out.
I think that's a common thing for clubs, and certainly in Sydney. I feel that Melbourne's got a lot more of a club culture than we do up here in Sydney. And I don't know whether that's because, when kids are growing up there, they're put into various clubs, whether it's AFL or whatever, but the community spirit seems to be a lot stronger down there.
I think in Melbourne it's got a much stronger car culture. I think in Sydney it's very much more like an American culture, and what I mean by that is most people are just interested in new product. They want AMG, Mercedes-Benzes, McLarens, Ferraris, Maseratis, but new stuff. But there is an old guard, and there's some fabulous cars here and fabulous car collections. And there are plenty of people. I've got clients who've got 10 to 20 cars, but there are people in Australia who have got hundreds of cars. There was a chap recently passed away, or relatively recently, who had 675 cars and 300 motorcycles.
I did know a guy up in the northern suburbs around Dural who had a lot of Saabs and Daimlers and other bits and pieces. And I remember going over to see him one day because I was chaperoning one of the cars down to King's School for the All British Day, and I was amazed at what he'd collected over the years. So I can imagine people sitting there with cars that just make them so happy because they remind them of parts of their youth.
Yeah, they had a good manufacturing base here in Sydney. Of course, BMC manufactured Morris Thousands, they manufactured MGBs and all sorts of interesting cars. So there's a real, soft spot and connection. But of course, the way the population of Australia has grown since post-World War II, you've got the Italians who love their Italian cars. You've got all sorts of different people who bring their own culture with them. And when it comes to the automotive side, they are loyal to their home country.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's good to catch up and talk to you, not just about the Scimitar, but about the whole community in general. I hope that you walk away with some kind of award for your car because it is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you very much. It's been a joy to speak to you.
Thank you. And finally, I met with Simon Cavelle, the first artist in residence, about his work and background. So whilst the awards and some of the show and display of the cars is going on, I am with Simon Cavelle, who is here as an artist, but I'm not going to sort of just say he's an artist. I'm going to let him describe what he does. But we are standing in front of a very beautiful picture of a Jim Richards Porsche. Simon, you are decked out in a very fetching outfit, which is good for a mechanic's overalls with various things on. So you do hold the part today. So I'll hand over to you to describe what you're doing here.
Right, well, thank you very much indeed for that nice introduction. I'm the first artist in residence for this concours, in fact any concours that I know, which is an exceptionally wonderful thing to be. The benefit or the outcome of this is that the best in show will be awarded a commissioned painting by myself of the winning car. Obviously that will take some time, so they'll be awarded a beautiful boxed up piece of a certificate which is signed and announces that fact. The car that we're looking at here is actually owned by a client, and they very kindly lent the painting to me to show during the exhibition. What I try and do, and I build these paintings from scratch. So I build the stretcher frame, and as that's been built, I then sign it, I date it, I say where it was made, and then stretch the canvas and prepare it. It's actually a tactile painting, as well as one you just enjoy looking at. So actually, I encourage people to actually feel the surface, because I burnish my paintings. I don't know anybody else that does that. I'm trying to do something very special. These cars that are owned by these amazing people, these cars are not just cars. They are parts of the family. They're history. They have huge amounts of memories and are very well loved.
Yep.
And so what I'm trying to do is bring that into all the painting.
Yep.
Around the edge of the painting, as you can see, it's quite a thick frame. I have things like the engine number, the chassis number, any detail that the client wants to include. That may well be covered up by a frame, but that's fine. There's lots of stuff that's part of the picture that isn't really need to be seen. That's the depth and the quality of it. Alongside that, I also take photographs of each step of the story, so that the client can see it and approve it and say yes. And I also then take films of the process, so you can actually see the build of the painting from start right the way to the finish. And that also it's really protecting the quality of the work, and that's what makes me enjoy what I do.
So it's immersive in a number of ways, because as I've spoken to some of the restoration guys here over the last couple of days, they've spoken about the research and getting the history of the vehicle together, because quite often there are sections missing and you've got to go and dig around and find all sorts of different documentations, especially if there's a provenance to the vehicle. You're kind of doing the same thing, but you're recording it in a different way, and it's very immersive when you can actually watch you do something and watch how the artwork evolves over a period of time.
Yes, absolutely right. And I'm experimenting with other ways of trying to include or carry the DNA of the actual car, like a vial of the engine oil or the sump oil, or a scratch of the paint, the actual paintwork that can be included either in the painting itself or part of the framing. So it's all part and parcel of trying to better the next thing, the next step, to be something very much more than just a painting.
And that then brings it to life for anybody that's looking at the picture, because, again, it's not just something on canvas. There's a whole structure behind it. Potentially, as you said, you've got, chassis numbers, engine numbers. If you've got something tangible that goes with it, it's now very much, the car is part of the picture.
It is indeed, and it's really building legacy. This is part and parcel of that whole story. And so when time comes and the car actually then moves on to the next owner or to the next member of the family, the painting lives on in its own right and can stay as a reminder, and so that's part and parcel of that.
And it's rather like people having portraits and profiles painted in the old days, when your children would get to a certain age and you'd have an artist come in, paint either the profile or a full-length painting of the young person, which then is part of a family heirloom as things go by. So people who've got these cars can hand it down as part of the heritage of the family.
Yes, absolutely. And my style and my approach to this particular painting, or these particular paintings, I try that they're quite dark. I layer quite a lot of varnish layers that are tinted very much like I'm using very much more an oil paint technique, but I use acrylics because they'll dry quicker and they're actually more environmentally friendly. But I'd like to try and think that this kind of painting would sit nicely in someone's home, rather than a lot of car paintings and some that I've done in the past wouldn't really look good. They look good in a garage. They look good in that, but these I hope will sit comfortably in a home.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid comment, because I know people that design garages and they do a lot of that spec, so they become oversized man caves, but they're also very focused on the vehicle, not on the family and the heritage, whereas what you're doing is bring it into the human group.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm trying to do, and it's an experience and a great treat to speak and work with the owners of such cars and understand the passion that they have. It's a real privilege.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in the Sydney Harbour Concours?
Through a great friend of mine who's an Australian. He was talking to actually James. And James and I and Lloyd met up for a lunch in London, and it was a boozy lunch.
That would be with James.
Yes, and we had a whale of a time. And then I realised that actually what was being suggested, that James or we all came up with, had never been done.
Yeah.
Would I consider coming across to Australia and doing something like this? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely love it. Yeah. And it's been a fantastic experience. Yeah. And
Well, why wouldn't you? The opportunity to come out and spend a lot of time with other people in a similar environment who've got sort of beautiful cars and other bits and pieces. The weather's pretty much held up for you, which is good. And you're showcasing skills that people will marvel at here on the side of the concourse.
Yes, I certainly hope so, and I've received some very nice words about what I'm doing, so I'm very encouraged.
And so, how long have you been doing this? And is this an evolution of your life, or is it something that you got into sort of later in life after a different career?
Not really. I mean, in fact, I started off as very, very bad at dyslexic before dyslexia was ever invented. And funnily enough, stupid is easier to spell than dyslexia. So, and as a dyslexic, I could draw quite easily, but I couldn't really write or read that well. Yeah. And so, my first love was horses, and I was a good rider, and ended up joining the Household Cavalry and breaking and training horses. So, we couldn't get more diverse than that. But over the years, I then worked as an interior architect, interior design, So that involves a lot of drawing and using drawing as a communication tool. So I've always painted and I've always drawn. I've always also been a petrol head.
Right.
So I've raced motorcycles and loved cars. And I decided I wanted to start focusing on cars because I felt that I could bring something to it.
Yeah. So were the Household Cavalry based in Windsor?
No, they're based in Knightsbridge. There was a squadron, and we spent time in Windsor. When I was in the regiment, I actually was on what's called the remount section. So I broke and trained horses, and we lived in 3 places. We'd go up to Melton Mowbray in Leicestershire, where we'd take in the horses who came across from the Irish Blacks, Ireland, and then we'd take that training through lead reining, long reining them, backing them, taking them down to Windsor, where we started to put the brown stuff, we'd call it khaki gear, jumping them, getting them used to swords, banging against them, and that type of thing. And once we passed them out in Windsor, we'd then take them what's called uptown to Knightsbridge and start putting all the jangly bits and shiny bits on them. And then eventually we'd then pass them out in front of the Queen. The Queen would come. We'd be only about 4 or 5 of us and 4 or 5 horses, and the Queen would come and watch and come and have a chat with us. And very, very well informed and incredibly passionate about horses.
Now, I lived in Windsor for a number of years, so I remember some of the cavalry on exercise, I guess, or exercising the horses along the way. And it was always one of those nice spectacles that you kind of walk by going, this is my local, but everybody else is a tourist and they're blown away by it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. I enjoyed going to Windsor, and Windsor, great park, of course, fabulous place to really, let the horse go, which you can't really do in Knightsbridge. There is Hyde Park, and Rotten Row, which was basically my office, but you can't do anything more than canter on Rotten Row. So
well, there is a speed limit in Knightsbridge.
There is.
So you moved from 1 horsepower to many horsepower. What sort of bikes did you run?
When I was young, I used to race Suzuki 250 GTs with the Ram Air system. I shared 3 bikes with another guy who drove the van because I wasn't old enough. So I enjoyed that, and latterly I gave up racing. It was far too dangerous. And my last bike was a Ducati 749, and loved it to death.
Well, my last one was a Multistrada 1200. So I have been running Ducatis for many years, but now, like you, I'm off the saddle, as it were, doing other bits and pieces. But let's go back to the artworks. How would somebody get hold of you if they wanted to talk to you about commissioning an artwork from you?
Yeah, well, they can contact me via the website, which is www.pavilionart.com. Remembering that Pavilion has 1 L, which is ironic that I should be, as a dyslexic, telling how people to spell, but I have at least learned that. Yes, and that's probably the best way to do it. People at the show have got my cards, which has got my phone number on. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll put that link up into the podcast detail as well, because I think people need to go and have a look and see at the artworks you're doing, because I'm sure that there are an awful lot of people out there who've got cars hidden away that would like to either have a memento of it, or a family member would like to have a memento of a particularly special car that either has been or still is in a family.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, these are not just cars. They are family heirlooms and very, very loved things.
Yeah. And I always say that, if you're in a motoring family, you always get attached to the vehicles you're driving. It's quite difficult to part with them, and I think that's because they do become part of the family group.
Yes, they do, and it's those types of emotions and those types of senses that I'm trying to capture. I'm never going to get them all, but the smell of the old car that your dad drove is inescapable. It's going to take you back. As soon as you hear that smell, that leather and the oil and a bit of petrol, and you think, God, yeah, that reminds me of when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's magic.
Well, actually, we used to have oil refineries near us when I was growing up, and I'd go out with my father working on some of the farms, on some of the projects, and he would go, "Oh, do you smell that?" And I go, "What?" And he says, "That smell reminds me of stuff from the war," because there would be a particular smell that would trigger his memory of being, in his early teens against a military airbase in the 40s. And I never really appreciated until later on, when I now smell things. There's a particular smell that comes in seasonal that instantly reminds me of the first time I came to Sydney. So, for you to be able to, have something in that is reminding people of those memories is really important.
Well, they say the sense of smell is the most triggering for your memories, and I thoroughly agree. My mother used to wear a particular scent, and you just need to just walk down the street and someone walks past you with that scent, and it transforms you back into a little kid. And where's mum?
That reminds me of my primary school teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Simon. We'll put the details up, as I said. The picture you've got on display is sensational. So once we've got somebody here who's been awarded, I guess, Best of Show, you'll then be sitting down with them and working out how best to, show that vehicle in its best light.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a joy and a privilege to do that.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks for your time.
Not at all.
It was a great day on Cockatoo Island, and seeing the cars in a moving display in the sunshine, seeing some of the rarest cars in the country, and enjoying the company of people who appreciate the design of these notable cars. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to your favourite player, whether it is Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Samsung, YouTube and Mixcloud, and get the episodes delivered as they're published. If you like classic rock music, then once you've listened to Motoring Weekly on Mixcloud, find White Rabbit Radio, which is our sister radio program. We do classic cars and classic rock. And you can also subscribe to the website, motoringweekly.com.au, and you'll also get notified when a new episode is uploaded. You can listen to all the episodes there if you don't use a podcast app. I'm Stephen Wells, and you've listened to Motoring Weekly, the podcast for the Australian historic road and racing community.